Government supporters attack Venezuelan Congress, injure opposition. Government supporters attack Venezuelan Congress, injure opposition lawmakers. Venezuelan lawmakers who oppose President Nicolás Maduro were beaten and bloodied on the floor of Congress Wednesday as pro-government mobs stormed the building, apparently facing little or no resistance from security guards. The attack left at least 15 people injured, according to opposition leaders, including one lawmaker who was rushed to the hospital with broken ribs and a head wound. Scenes of the melee shared on social media showed masked, pro-Maduro assailants kicking and punching lawmakers in the chambers of Congress and in the streets outside. Reporters inside the building were also attacked and robbed of their equipment.